Okay, so today we're going to talk about the formation of precipitation. First we have to talk about what's known as the water cycle. The water cycle is the process of the water going from the ground, from lakes and streams, and then it evaporates due to heat from the sun, and then it's transferred by clouds, or transported by clouds, and then once enough water vapor collects in a cloud for it to be heavy enough for it to fall, it falls in different forms of precipitation. And then it goes back to the ground surface and it starts all over again. So when the clouds get heavy enough full of vapor, there's several different kinds of precipitation you can get. You can get rain, snow, sleet, or hail. So rain is just the basic one when the clouds get heavy and you have the water droplets that fall. And you can have big droplets, which is like a light drizzle, or you can have the heavier droplets. When there's so much of it, they start to gather together as they're falling. And then you have snow, which is when the cold droplets in the clouds mix with cold crystals that are in the clouds, when the clouds form in a cold air temperature. Then you have sleet, which is when it falls as rain, so it's not as cold up high, but then as it falls, it starts to freeze just before it hits the ground. And then you have hail, which is when there's heavy droplets, and then you have strong uplifts of cold wind, which takes the droplet back up into the cloud, and then it forms freezing little hail balls. And then as the bigger that they get, it's how many times they're going back through that cycle. So if it falls several over and over and over again, you can get added layers and layers and layers within that hailstone. Okay, so then we talk about air mass. So air mass is basically a uniform body of air across a horizontal plane. So we have different types of air mats, which are Arctic, tropical, polar, and equatorial. So Arctic is pretty much probably what you could imagine. It's going to be in a very cold Arctic environment. And then we have tropical, which is low latitude, so a warm southern environment, usually like around the Gulf of Mexico, like that kind of area. And then we have polar, which is high latitude, when it's very cold. And then we have the equatorial, which is along the equator, so it's pretty warm. And then we also have the different types of weather fronts. So we have a cold front, a warm front, a stationary front, and an occluded front. So with the cold front, you have your cold air mass and the warm air mass. And the cold air mass is basically pushing into the warm air mass and lifting it up. So within the cold air front, we have northwest. They usually travel from the northwest to the southeast, and the temperatures can drop fairly rapidly, and you can have a possibility of heavy rain. So then within our warm air front, we have warm air sliding up over the cold air, and it can be followed by milder, warmer weather and a gentle rain. And then the stationary front is pretty much just self-explanatory. It's just a stationary act where there's warm air and then there's a cloud or a wave of warm air and cold air. And neither of them have enough force or momentum to push one the other way. So they pretty much just stay the way they are. Not a lot of change with that one. And then we have the occluded front, where you have a warm air mass sliding kind of down in between and pushing the cold air apart. And that can also often bring heavy precipitation.